we must not forget that we're building this towards mass adoption. And
Yeah.
that's why we're building this. We're not building this. I do understand that people take pleasure on building this and being technical, but we do need to focus on the end user.
Hmm.
And for that, they need to understand. And for that, we need more financial literacy as well, which is a big
Hmm.
problem across the world. But
Yeah.
we need to be, like the ones making the change and the ones providing people, if we do need to provide the information about being more like providing more financial literacy, we're going to do that by either educating people in terms of using terms of Web3, but in the end of the day, that's one thing we should do. And
All right, welcome back, everyone, to a freshly minted Fantom Edge. I'm here with a very special guest. His name is Diogo from Ankr. Diogo, how you doing, my man?
everything all right. Thank you so much for having me here.
Of course, man. It's an honor, as always, to have a guest like you on the show. And let's get right into it, man. We've talked off camera, right? I want you to explain a little bit about your story on how you started working in crypto and how specifically with Ankr. So, can you give us a little backstory on your journey, how you got here?
All right, yeah. So like put it in like a brief summary. I started like in more like working towards pharmaceutical with some pharmaceutical clients. Then I jumped to everything on the marketing side while developing the products in Portugal, well the market I'm in right now. And then I switched to luxury where I was dealing mainly with brands like Rolex, Patek Philippe, all of these brands developing their own products in Portugal alongside with some stores that I ended up developing. And then like a funny story short, like I had this friend that used to go to one of the stores I was managing, and he started talking. And at the time, like I was actually a friend of mine already like was talking about the big inflow of capital into the traditional finance markets, and I
Mhm.
was like, all right, so this is quite interesting. And all of a sudden, this friend comes by the store. And it's like, oh, like Bitcoin, have you seen like the massive, like inflow as well? Like it was like the bull market.
Mhm.
Like, do you know anything about it? I was like, yeah, like I'm reading about it. Not really into it as of now. And it was like I think that was like the starting point on which I got really interested on the industry. And I started studying. I started taking like some of those like online courses as well, and started reading as much white papers as I could and trying to understand the basics, and then going through. I think everyone watches Whiteboard Crypto, to be
Mhm.
honest. Like like the basics,
Great
and
start.
like
Great start for a lot of people, man.
yeah, for sure. And then all of a sudden, like I'm like on these calls to possibly get into like roles in Web3, and then he's like, "Oh, when are you jumping like 100% into crypto?" And I was like, "Well, whenever I get the chance, like I'm ready, and I'd love to." And he was like, "Oh yeah, my girlfriend actually works at one of these companies, so it was the Ankr, the company I'm working for right now.
Yeah.
Do you want to jump into a call because they're looking for someone to step in at first of all like social media associate, and then he ended up being like community manager. So I started as community manager. Actually is actually celebrating 1 year in
Yeah.
2 weeks.
Yeah.
And then well, some time passed by. I ended up going to head of community, then events, head of events, and finally DeFi Marketing Manager, which is like always was my dream role, specifically because I love DeFi and it's one of the areas I'm mostly in. But usually I was on my past roles, I'm actually dealing with both infrastructure side and
Mhm.
DeFi side as well. So yeah, that's a bit of
Yeah.
a short story on my background and what got me here so far.
Of course, man. The reason I wanted to ask that because I think I want to emphasize a lot of people's journey here is very non-linear, which is a moment in time in crypto specifically that it could happen, right? Sometimes we think about, when you're younger, you go to school, you go to college, and then you're going to have a career for 40 years, and you're fearful for valid reasons to switch careers. But you just showcase that you've been in different industries, same fundamentals, marketing, but you're here now, and probably one of a very amazing company like Ankr providing a lot of tooling specifically in the infrastructure side. So next question I asked for you, it's going to be like a scenario based, this is more educational. You guys provide infrastructure for builders. Can you
Yeah.
explain to us what RPCs are and a use case for them? Like, why would someone building a dApp need an RPC?
All right. Well, there's tons of use cases that I actually ended up like explaining all these use cases actually today. So that's like, so for the RPC side, which is our main side of the company. So let's imagine, for example, you have your decentralized application, and let's say that you want to feature a certain price of a certain token, and such. You'll need a tool that is able to gather that price, that information from the blockchain, and deploy it into your own decentralized application. This can also be, for example, this can also be applied. I'm gonna there's like methods inside RPCs, like that you can use. And one of them is actually, getting the price of a specific NFT, so just so you can display it on your website, for example. That's a very simple, easy to understand RPCs. It's to gather specific information from the blockchain.
Mm-hmm.
So the importance of having, fast RPCs with like a pretty good uptime, pretty good speeds, pretty good latency as well, is that it's going to impact, for example, if you're dealing with decentralized finance products on which you need to rely on time, for example, for arbitrage opportunities on which you need to rely on fast execution, the faster your RPCs are on gathering that information, and the fast you'll be to execute your transactions, for example, the faster you have the information, the faster you can also send information. The way you receive and send, it's very important towards not only DeFi, but also infrastructure, and for every kind of decentralized application out there. So that's why it's important to going into a bit more educational side as well. So let's imagine you're in, let's say like India, for example, and you actually are using RPCs for, Fantom, for example. So you're building a decentralized application in the Fantom network, and you're actually using RPCs. So if the servers that are providing you with that connection are in the US, the quality of that, the provision of that information, it's not going to be as good as if the server was closer to you in terms of speed, in terms of like delivering the quality of the service you're looking for, that you require on that specific location. It's not going to be good enough. So that's why as much as you like, you should really try to decentralize in terms of geography, by like having your service across the world. It's always a good option instead of having it into pivotal points in major markets, such as you have Berlin, and then you have New York, and all of those. You can by segmenting your locations on which you're able to provide a faster connection towards your services, such as RPCs. That's really good. So it's like literally the closer you are to the provider of the RPCs, to the specific servers, the closer, the quicker it will be for you to use these RPCs into your decentralized applications, basically.
Absolutely. And we all know how fast information flows in this space. So when it comes to a technical a part of the infrastructure like RPCs, you need fast quality data. Like you said, a big thing in the space is arbitrage. If you're going to do some arbitrage, you're going to need some fast info. Now, another thing that you guys provide is liquid staking, right? It's been it's a very accessible way for people to invest in DeFi without necessarily locking up their assets for a locking period, right? Can you explain to us what liquid staking is and how it's beneficial for a consumer?
Yeah, sure. I'm gonna try not to get too excited here, because like it's literally
go crazy,
one
man.
thing that I love. Yeah. So so let me just give you a bit of context into liquid staking. This problem started to come up with Ethereum, basically. So before the Shanghai update, for those who are around, like before the Shanghai update took place, usually for you to run a validator, you need to have 32 Ethereum as collateral, and that's why they're staking, or for instead of you need 32 Ethereum for you to be able to validate, you can actually gather a pool of participants on which they contribute with the specific amounts of Ethereum, and such they more people can participate, and thus the network becomes more decentralized. So this is like short of like how it works the validation system on a proof of stake network. But what happened was the Ethereum, since it was a beacon chain, they really like weren't allowing people to unstake the Ethereum, and this creates a problem of capital efficiency. So users will like only benefit the API that this token will like get them from the validation of the blocks, and the factor of they're not able to actually unstake their tokens actually created a capital efficiency problem. So they were locked into that specific investment with that specific API, and there was a huge risk for them to actually contribute with these valuable tokens. So like what came up in 2020? So basically, there was like a white paper made by Mara Schmidt from Alluvial and Colin Myers that is working in Opal Network right now. And he released a white paper called Internet Bonds. And that was the whole start that Ankr picked up. And in 2020, they actually, like released liquid staking towards the mass public. And like from there, Lido actually released a bit later. They're huge in Ethereum. I'm sorry, my puppy is like.
Oh, you're good, man. He wants to be featured, man. It gets him
Yeah.
excited as well.
Yeah. But like the main idea was to provide basically users with the chance to, although they have their Ethereum locked, they can, by issuing a synthetic token that represents their stake into the Ethereum validation process. So like, for example, if I supply 1 Ethereum towards the validation process, if I use Ankr, basically they'll do that for me. So they'll take my Ethereum and they'll validate blocks using my 1 Ethereum, and they'll actually issue a token that represents my stake. So they'll issue a token that represents my 1 Ethereum, that it's unlocked, because so my Ethereum of course is going to be locked before the Shanghai update. It's going to be locked and such, because I need the flexibility. I want to get more APIs, more returns on top of my Ethereum. I'm going to get this synthetic token, this representative token, that I can then use in other protocols to explore, further APIs, yield farming strategies, you name it. So this is like the whole point of increasing capital efficiency was, the main objective of actually doing liquid staking. I think people usually, find it complicated to understand the objective of liquid staking, because, now that we don't have Shanghai update, like it's not long gone, but it's something of the past, and people start to see like liquid staking on Fantom and all these networks as well. They feel like, so all right, so what's the main purpose of it? Because they weren't really here on the beginning where this main objective was so evident. But like it's and some of the main benefits is that regarding locking times, there's no locking time right now. Even like, so there's a big problem, like people say, oh, there's a locking time. There's still a locking time. When you try to unstake a token, the epochs it take to unstake that token, that's a locking time. That's a time where the token is not, it's like it's being unlocked. It's not capital efficiency. It's not accruing rewards, and it's you need that time. If like a shift on the market takes place, that's a dangerous time. So there's a risk, and as soon as there's a locking period, there's risk. And such. That's why, like, for example, we are starting to enable on more chains. We've started with 1 chain as of now, with the flash and staking. That's something that like you can trace back to Marinade Finance from Solana. So flash and staking, what is flash and staking? So let me know if I'm getting too excited here.
No, this is great, because this is very important for people to understand, because I think these are tools and services necessary for people to experience a DeFi space in the most efficient way possible. So no, go ahead.
So like to avoid this risk, so to avoid having the tokens locked for like 1 week, 30 days, what we enabled is, so basically we created a treasury pool, which, like, let's imagine you have a specific amount of tokens from that specific network, and if you want to unstake immediately, depending on the amount of tokens on this specific pool or treasury, we're gonna basically extract a percentage of a fee we're gonna charge you for you to have that immediate liquidity, so that you can immediately in stake. So that's a big plus. And this can range from 0.3% in fees to 3% in fees, taking consideration the amount of tokens that there is in the treasury pool that usually accrues from the liquid staking product itself. So it's not trying to go a bit too much in depth in this,
Yeah.
but this is one of the risks that we're trying to mitigate. And this is something that it's meaningful as well for not only for liquid staking but also for staking in general.
Yeah.
So this is something that we're trying to do, and then we can move on to omni-chain liquid staking. Like
Yeah.
exploring Ankr FDM on other chains, or like other like our competitors are also exploring this.
Yeah.
Like it's a very cool space to be working on,
Yeah.
specifically liquid staking, because I do feel like I do not feel like there's competitors. I do feel like we're all focusing on different sides, and
Mm.
even if we're focusing on the same network, usually there's so much to win if you collaborate.
Yeah.
And we've been noticing that everyone is open to collaborate, and
Yeah.
we're really glad to push the boundaries of DeFi and the kind of
Yeah.
opportunity you can get. Another fun fact and very curious fact, a very important fact,
Mhm.
is that I always speak about this. It's liquid staking and staking in general and DeFi in general. We all often focus on major markets such as the US and Europe, but we
Mhm.
often do not look at emergent markets where
Mm.
they do search for, like the unbanked do search
Mhm.
for this kind of opportunities, this kind of options, and like makes such a difference. And like if you start to analyze the numbers, traffic coming like to your website, the kind of
Mhm.
users that you have and all that, you'll start to realize that the kind of the learning curve
Mhm.
on these specific demographics and the specific geographical points in the world,
Mhm.
it's so much faster than in major markets, because you know although most of these countries don't have as much access to technology as the rest, they have such much faster adaptation
Mhm.
towards this technology, towards learning, towards interacting with it, towards exploring options regarding DeFi,
Mhm.
towards even like they do not really need to interact with DeFi by just having the chance to have dollars, for example, having the chance to
Yeah.
stake those dollars,
Mhm. Mhm.
get a certain percentage of the API, being able to pay, and then that's what actually something that you also see is like the amount of payment solutions and the amount of opportunities that you get to spend your tokens in the real
Yeah.
life on their countries is quite good as well. So
Yeah.
I do think that we often forget to talk about like the difference that DeFi, not only liquid staking, but the difference that DeFi makes around the
Yeah.
world. Not only like when you're dealing with major markets, much more like like increasing the capital efficiency of a certain like the financial product. But I think it's much more interesting that if we're talking about mass adoption,
Mhm.
I think it would be much easier, much faster, and much more, much more rewarding
Mm.
if we look at these markets.
Yeah.
Um, and that's one thing we've been doing when like we've been trying to support, and that's one thing like that we also talk with our partners, our competitors to push
Yeah.
this forward. And I think it's a valuable objective to have in DeFi.
That's a great point because I think that's what DeFi, one of the things DeFi aims to do, right? I mean, just decentralize the finance part. And I think, like you said, in emerging markets, a lot of people are unbanked, right? So what happens when you have some access to some funding, right? And you're able to see better returns versus a bank that's going to give you very small returns, right? That's just one perspective. But I'm glad that you ended with that because first of all, thank you so much for a very, very like nice, in-depth, clear understanding of liquid staking. And then also just putting the bow on top about what DeFi stands for. Now,
Yeah.
that said, I think it's a good transition. I would like your perspective on this. Aside, we went over two different things that could help a lot of users around both in large markets and emerging markets. But let's suppose, you have a friend, or let's suppose I'm that new person, right? What is one thing that you encourage people to learn first when they enter the DeFi space? It moves fast, right? It's a subsector of a lot of this other stuff. What's one of the two things, foundational learnings that you think people should do before they jump in?
I think if they do have the basics, the basic understanding of how a blockchain works, how a validation of blocks work, how hashing works, and how like Merkle trees work, for example, and basic tokenomics, I think that's a good time to move into DeFi. But I do think like if you're already into Web3 and you used to deal with the specific protocols and you used to interact with them
Mhm.
on both the infrastructure or like any other like kind of area on Web3, I think I would like I don't want to really sound like pretty basic, but I think whiteboard crypto and the DeFi now like the kind of educational content
Yeah.
like these YouTubers actually produce, it's a good way to start. I think like actually understanding specific concepts of DeFi. So I'll name a few if like the listeners and the viewers want to actually take notes and like go like
Yeah.
like let me search a bit more onto those topics. But I would like I'll start with what is a decentralized exchange?
Mhm.
What is automated market maker? Everything is connected. What is a liquidity pool, for example? What's the concept of yield farming? Where like but and actually also dwell a bit more into the concept of block validation into a proof of stake network.
Mhm.
So maybe start with how a proof of stake network works, then move into block validation, how you can extract the API
Mhm.
from the tokens that the network generates as a reward, and then start looking to token application.
Mhm.
So the decentralized exchange needs a place to get the tokens from. So these are liquidity pools. And then you can start looking at like much more things. Like of
Yeah.
course, then to create the volume, usually centralized exchanges use this to create the volume where you have market makers that they do they create a match between buyer and seller, or they do actually execute specific trades, and they do create the volume for specific tokens.
Yeah.
So these I think these are like the basics that are not so basic,
Yeah.
but I think that and speaking about education, I think it's on us, all the protocols, all the networks that we need
Yeah.
to push this forward. So big thumbs up to you and
Mhm.
what you do here by providing that educational content, because that's one of the biggest
Yeah.
hurdles and barriers that we currently have on DeFi. To be honest,
Yeah.
it's like if like guys, if you're really like going into the rabbit hole of DeFi,
Mhm.
it's still very complicated. It's if you're
Yeah.
gonna try to explore specific liquidity pools that they use specific, mechanics, it's
Mhm.
gonna be even for us sometimes like with innovations,
Yeah.
it's hard to keep up.
Mhm.
It's hard to, like okay, so there's concentrated liquidity, so manual or automatic. Then there's the bribe. Then there's the incentives. Then you need to
Mhm.
lock the incentives again so you can get the bribes. It's complicated.
Yeah.
So I would stick with the basics. So proof of stake networks, how blocks are validated, so how they can extract the APIs,
Yeah.
the rewards of the network. So the utility of the token. So in this case, um, can be all the tokens that they use to
Yeah.
incentivize the validation of the blocks, and then move into the concept of DeFi itself, which is decentralized exchanges, liquid pools,
Mhm.
automated market makers. Following, and then yield farming, go a bit more in depth towards the DeFi world, and then concentrated liquidity, V models, like incentives and bribes, restaking, which is going to be a big trend, and distributed validator technology.
As you can see, I mean, for those listening, bring out a notepad. But as you can tell, there's so many different rabbit holes to go down,
Yeah,
and I like how you started that. They all connect to each other. You need to understand one concept to connect the
true.
other concept. So, yeah, like you say, I mean, DeFi is very very complex still. And I'm glad that you shared the honesty, even working within the specific DeFi space, because yeah, I mean, documentation is hard. You know, sometimes the new consumer, even just a general consumer, could have a hard time understanding what's exactly going on. And the last thing that we want people to do is lose money by not understanding
True.
what's going on, right? Diogo, the last thing I want to know is what are you personally bullish on in the space, you know, in this next year, or what are you excited about? What gets you going?
Well, like I'm a bit more focused onto DeFi, but I'm definitely looking forward towards in terms of security for the networks that use proof of stake. I'm looking forward to more development inside distributed validator technology,
Mm,
and I'm gonna explain this pretty easily. I think it's a pretty good explanation. So let's imagine you have 32 Ethereum, for example. Let's imagine this kind of concept. Let's imagine you have 32 Ethereum and you want to be a validator, or you want to give that 32 Ethereum to a validator, and the validator will like validate the blocks. But if he misbehaves,
mm.
you're gonna have slashing. So
Slashing.
they're gonna slash part of your collateral, which is a 32 Ethereum, because you misbehave.
Mm,
And this misbehaving on a proof of stake network can just be like you going offline, for example,
mm, mm,
if your computer goes offline. So what is distributed validator technology? So for a validator to validate blocks, he has a validator key. So it's his like let's say it's his password to validate blocks.
mm,
And let's imagine with that validator key, you give access to 5 of your friends that are like in specific locations across the world.
mm.
Like, and if the computers, if the validation is connected, if for example you go offline, your friend can immediately start on his side, so there's no downtime, so there's no slashing.
Yeah.
And apart from there's no risk of slashing, of losing your like your funds, there's also the fact that it contributes towards decentralization of the network by adding more validators. So I think this is a big trend. Of course, I'm bullish. I'm not bullish because I work with it, but I'm bullish because I've been seeing the narrative set up on liquid staking for a while, and I do feel it's weird because like it's weird when you work on something and then all of a sudden it starts to become the narrative of DeFi. I'm like it's you don't feel it as much as like the hype because you've been working on it.
Yeah.
So I would say liquid staking is a big narrative right now, specifically because of the capital efficiency and the amount of
Yeah.
returns that it can get if we have specific innovations on chains such as concentrated liquidity.
Hmm.
That's one of the innovations that are it's just in specific chains that if it goes towards other chains and if we do create true interoperability, I think it's going to be big. Um, bribes and incentives it's a trend as of now. Like as soon as as soon as Uniswap uh, on April 1st, lost the rights to use this kind of like V models with V3. They everyone is now forking that. And for example, you have some big protocols on that side as well.
Hmm.
Um, like um like there's a ton actually using that. TNAs is some big guys using that as well. They're doing that pretty well. They actually, so basically the concept is let's imagine you have let's say Fantom, for example. And you actually stake Fantom. So the incentives you'll get is let's say you're staking Fantom in let's say Project X, for example. Um, and you stake Fantom on Project Y or Project A, let's say Project A. You stake your Fantom in Project A, and that Project A gives you token A
Hmm.
as an incentive. So that's part of your API. You get that as an incentive. You get that as part of like your rewards for staking that Fantom
Hmm.
is token A.
Hmm.
So what you do with token A, which is a governance token, is you're gonna lock that token to give also like a bit of like security to the specific project. It can be one of the reasons, and by locking that token A, they're going to give you a VE token A.
Hmm.
So and with that VE token A, you can participate on voting to which liquidity pool do you want the rewards to be sent to? So
Mhm.
basically, to which liquidity pool you want the protocol to redirect the best APIs. So basically, they're going to redirect more rewards toward that liquidity pool. It's going to increase the API, it's going to increase the returns because they have more money to give.
Yeah.
So this is like a good cycle that you can do to motivate more users to come in into DeFi and to actually, increase the capital efficiency because layer by layer, you adding API to the specific layers. So you having the returns from staking Fantom, then you're having the returns by locking the rewards that you get, and then you're getting the incentives that are the bribes that, like for example, like if project B wants to say no, like I want users to be motivated to use my liquidity pool to
Mhm.
deposit their tokens there. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna issue a bribe. I'm gonna say, look, guys, we're going to have 10K in US dollars that's going to be shared by the amount of voters that vote on my pool for the rewards to go to my pool. So that's the basic concept. So I would say, these are like the main things
Yeah.
well, they're also trends, but and then the things that I'm mostly bullish. Uh, um, of course, then you have the concept of restaking that is just emerging right now. Everyone is so hyped about it, like brings much more security to new
Mhm.
networks, to new projects by using the concept of restaking. But that's a bit too complicated. That's really going to the technical side. But if
Mhm.
you guys want to investigate, there it is. It's restaking. The concept is restaking. So feel free to
Yeah.
go ahead and search for it. But I would say these are the things I'm mostly bullish on.
Awesome, man. Well, no, absolutely. I think there's a lot of different avenues to see in
Too
specifically in
many.
DeFi. Yeah, there's a lot, you got to pick and choose. But that's the beautiful thing about the space, man. There's a lot to learn, and you can't, I always say you can't really fall in love with one thing too much because there's so much other things you need to experience, right? But
So true.
Diogo, thank you so much for your time, man. Thank you so much for chatting with me today, talking about liquid staking, RPCs, DeFi basics, what people should focus on and learn about, and then what you're bullish on. So it's been a pleasure, man. And I hope to stay in touch with you.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for the opportunity. Thank you so much for your time. And like I do really, thumbs up for, like pushing the educational side of it.
Of
It's
course.
really important. Like we should do it, way more often.
Yeah.
Everyone actually like team effort, like in Web3.
Yeah.
Like I was saying, it's still too complicated.
Yeah.
Like we don't notice it because we are working inside this industry, and for us everything is so easy to understand. But we must not forget that we're building this towards mass adoption. And
Yeah.
that's why we're building this. We're not building this. I do understand that people take pleasure on building this and being technical, but we do need to focus on the end user.
Mhm.
And for that, they need to understand. And for that, we need more financial literacy as well, which is a big
Mhm.
problem across the world. But
Yeah.
we need to be, like the ones making the change and the ones providing people, if we do need to provide the information about being more like providing more financial literacy, we're going to do that by either educating people in terms of using terms of Web3, but in the end of the day, that's one thing we should do. And like props to you, thumbs up to you for
Thank you, man.
this initiative. So thank you
Of
so much for your
course.
time.
Of course, man. Likewise, it's a pleasure, and it won't be the last time, man. Like you said, we got to continue to do so, because the goal is mass adoption. Because we need people to use this technology, right? Or else there's really no point. But thank you, Diogo. Until next time, my
Thank
friend.
you so much. Thank you so much. Bye bye. Take care.